do bear a grudge.
Wrath of Man is directed by Guy Ritchie and it stars Jason Bateman. The plot follows H, a cold and mysterious character working at a cash truck company responsible for moving hundreds of millions of dollars around Los Angeles each week. I like Guy Ritchie's style of directing. It seems like he makes the movie the way he wants to make it and he doesn't give a fuck what everyone says. Not with Aladdin and some of his other more Hollywood movies, but movies like Snatch and then more recently The Gentleman, which I finally got to see last night. It seems like Guy Ritchie just makes a movie the way he wants to make it. He tells everyone to piss off. And like I just said, I watched The Gentleman last night for the first time, and I was mad I didn't watch it earlier, but it was a lot of fun. I really liked that movie a lot. Like I said, I love Guy Ritchie's style of directing. It was funny. It was interesting. There was a lot of twists. It was thrilling. It was great. So what do I think of Wrath of Man? I think it's fine. I think it's a pretty good movie, but it is not like The Gentleman at all, and I don't really want to compare the two, but it's hard not to because they're both Guy Ritchie movies. This movie is all over the place, not in a bad way, but all over the place, like Guy Ritchie films are, but it's not really in a fun way. This movie is really dreadful. There was not really any funny moments in this movie. Yes, there's some funny lines of dialogue every once in a while, but it's not like movies like Snatch or The Gentleman. It's more depressing, which was surprising, and I'm not knocking the movie off for that because this plot was interesting. I was surprised by this film because the way it was marketed is not what this film's like at all. Yes, it's about Jason Bateman getting revenge, basically. I don't want to go into it too much. But the way this trailer portrays this movie, by the way, don't watch the trailer if you haven't seen it yet because it gives away a lot of spoilers. The trailer makes it seem like this is a action movie. A lot of action, trucks getting robbed, all that. It's not really like that at all. There's a lot more to this movie. And like I said, it is all over the place in a good way. But there's a lot more characters than you would think. There's a lot more of a story. And it is overall very interesting. I love the opening of this film. It's all in one shot. They blur out some audio and some visuals. And you understand that this is the main focus. The pivotal point of this film is this opening. And there's a lot of mystery behind what happened in this opening scene. And the way they present it in the opening scene is great because there is so much mystery throughout the movie because of that. Guy Ritchie did a great job with directing and writing this film. I know more writers were on this film as well, but a lot of the dialogue did remind me of Guy Ritchie films. And he did a great job. There is a lot of moments of suspense. There are some great shots. There's also a lot of interesting dialogue. It feels like a Guy Ritchie more in a dramatic way. Jason Bateman's great in this film. He's just normal Jason Bateman. He knows how to handle a fucking gun, and he's really cool when he swears. He's great in this film. It's just Jason Bateman being Jason Bateman. He knows what he's doing, and he's always killing in that sense. My issues with the film has nothing to do with the tone. I don't care that it's dreadful. I think it's a nice change of pace compared to some of Guy Ritchie's best films. And I like that Guy Ritchie's making films that he's good at making about crime and thriller and all that shit. But some of my issues have to do with the plot. Sometimes it is a little boring. Sometimes it does drag. There is a very long period of time in this film where they're giving a lot of backstory, and some of it isn't that interesting, so you can kind of tune out in some points of the movie. And for the villains, I don't want to say they're bad villains, because whenever they're on screen, there are some interesting things about them, and their motivation makes sense, but I don't know how to describe it. Like, they weren't that great of villains, but they weren't bad. They were just sort of meh. Like, anytime they're on screen, I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then to be on screen for too long, I'm like, all right, let's get back to Jason Bateman. I want to see Jason Bateman do more Jason Bateman things. And I know I said before as a compliment for Guy Ritchie how his films are all over the place, which I love. But there are times where I was a little bit confused what's going on. It eventually all makes sense, I think. But there are times throughout the movie where you kind of feel like you're playing catch-up because there's a lot of information thrown at you. And it is pretty straightforward, but there are just other aspects, like some of the little details that didn't really make sense to me. In the end, though, Wrath of Man was pretty good. It's definitely a Guy Ritchie movie. There's a lot of times it's all over the place, but in a good way. As I said a million times, there are parts of this story that are very suspenseful. There are some interesting parts. I love the opening of this film. Jason Bateman. He's always great as Jason Bateman. I thought the tone was fine. It was very different than the normal crime, thriller, comedy that Guy Ritchie normally does. It's crime and thriller, but it's more dreadful, and I thought that worked for this film. I just had some issues with some of the storytelling because it did slow down the movie as a whole sometimes, and the villains were meh, and some things didn't really make sense to me. But overall, I think it's a pretty good addition to Guy Ritchie's pretty impressive filmography. I'll give Wrath of Man 7 Davy Daves. Definitely go check it out. It's in theaters. I was interested throughout most of this film. Go support theaters. I've said this a million times. It's Guy Ritchie. It's an original film. I'm glad Guy Ritchie's sticking with this crime thriller genre that he's really good at and not doing the big Hollywood thing like Aladdin. I do like those Sherlock Holmes movies, though. Those are fun. So, Wrath of Man. Let me know what you guys thought if you've seen it. I'm curious to hear. And thank you so much for watching. Click here to see more of Dave Dave's Takes.